Hello and welcome to Nikon Z6III Day, the day that you can finally pick up your Nikon Z6 III. I've had the fortunate ability to be testing this camera over the past month and I absolutely love it. It is my recommendation for wedding photographers in the Nikon space now. I am on my way out the door to my first shoot with this camera, and I thought I would take this as an opportunity to set this up with you exactly how I do it for my real life work. If you're not familiar with myself and the channel, I am Taylor Jackson. I'm a wedding photographer from just outside of Toronto in Canada. I've photographed over 1,000 weddings in my career, and most of those weddings have been on Nikon. For most years, I photographed somewhere between 60 to 70 weddings, so a pretty high volume studio for a single photographer. And if you want to go behind the scenes to real life wedding days or learn a little bit more about how I actually scale a business like that, subscribe to the channel and also like this video down there. Now, let's set up the camera. Also, this thing on the top is a Atomos Ninja Star. It is not something you need. It is simply for my screen recording purposes. So my camera actually, usually I feel like it boots you into a welcome screen and it forces you to do the time and date. Maybe mine is a little bit special, but even though I've just entered into regular menu mode, I'm actually going to come down here and I'm going to go to the top of the setup menu. Matt Johnson is messaging me. He's at an Irish pub. Also, if you're a video shooter and you have one of these cameras, go check out Matt Johnson's channel. He does a lot more video focused things. This is more focused on photography and also hybrid photos / video coverage, which is what my setup's going to be today. So number one, I'm gonna come over here and set up the time zone and the date. So now, when I shoot this alongside my other cameras, everything is nice and synced. I'm going to go through my photography settings first, and I honestly don't change a whole lot. You can change file naming, so I usually just change this to, this is a Z6, so we're gonna go TJ6, okay. Primary slot selection remains as CF Express. Secondary slot, I changed this from overflow to backup, and that means that you're just writing everything to both cards, both your RAW files as well as your JPEGs, which we're gonna talk about in a second. Image area, no change. Tone mode, no change. Image quality, I'm going to come over here, and we're gonna go up and we're gonna set it to RAW plus JPEG normal. So the reason that I shoot RAW plus JPEG is not because I am a crazy person from Canada, is because I back up all the JPEGs in the cloud the night of the wedding. So I get home, download all my cards, or I download most of the card usually at the reception, get home, and before I go to sleep, I'm uploading all those JPEGs to the cloud, so I have some sort of offsite backup pretty quickly. Nikon's cloud service probably can also do that. I'm going to just continue it that way because I have a standardized process that works for me. If the cloud is something that interests you, maybe check it out. RAW recording on, I do high efficiency plus. So for wedding days, I haven't seen a huge difference between really any of these settings. So high efficiency star is nearly identical to lossless. So I'm going to leave it as that. Nikon files are incredible and you will love them and this new camera. ISO sensitivity settings, so it's on auto right now. You don't have to change this in the menu. You can actually hold the ISO button up here. So if you hold the ISO, the actual button, and you move the front wheel left or right, so the front wheel up here, if you're moving that left or right, you will actually go off of auto ISO. So I'll do a little demo here. I'm gonna switch this into, what do we wanna do? Aperture priority. So I switched the dial from green box mode up to A mode, which is aperture priority. And now I can change my auto ISO. So if you select ISO, press down, it makes that yellow, and you go left and right, you set it to auto and off auto. I like this a lot because a lot of other camera systems, when you're changing ISO, if you get down to the bottom ISO, which is low 1.0 in this case, and you try to go a little bit lower, it puts into auto and then it boosts your ISO. It's a little confusing. I prefer the way that Nikon's done it. Also, just as a general note, this is a real ISO, whereas these ones here are extended ISOs. And you're gonna get your best dynamic range theoretically out of ISO 100. The differences might be marginal, but if you're reading on the internet and you're like, never shoot extended ISOs either on the low end or the high end once you get to here, these ones might start to look pretty crazy. And maybe try to keep it in the bounds of the actual proper ISOs if you want maximum dynamic range. I'm not a scientist, but this is what I've learned in my time. Now we're gonna go back into the menu. I always shoot on either shade or cloudy. I find that shade here is a little bit too orange for me. You can obviously just change this with the eye menu as well. So if you hit the eye button, this pops up and you can change your white balance to whatever you want. I find shade to be a little bit too orange. I like cloudy. I don't shoot a whole lot of auto white balance. And if I do, there's actually a bonus here. So white balance, you can see that there's like these little arrows underneath. And with auto white balance, you can do 3 options. So keep white, reduce warm colors, which I don't want, unless you want everything pristine white. That might be the way to go. keep overall atmosphere. So if you're at a wedding day, it tries to keep the atmosphere of the day, or keep warm lighting colors. I like this one the most, so I will set it to this and it will stay like that forever on this camera. If I am outside or if I'm in natural light, I'm always going to be on cloudy or potentially shade white balance mode. And I do that for just better skin tones in general. If I'm posing somebody out there, I am always going to have their face to the shade. I'm never going to be really photographing anyone in direct sun. There's a few extreme cases that I might. For the most part, there's no direct sun hitting anyone's face to get that nice soft light. So they're always facing away and into the shade. And I am essentially white balancing for their face. So their face is in the shade. So therefore I am shade white balanced to bring out the proper accurate skin tone. Back into the menus, picture control. I leave this on automatic, or you can put it on standard if you want. I don't believe it affects the raw files at all. I'm sure that there is a way that when you load it into Lightroom that you can have it pull in those settings if you want. I go from raw files and presets and everything, so that's not something that I worry about. If you are looking for those really, really nice straight to camera JPEGs, it might be something to play around with, as well as D-lighting, which we'll talk about in a moment. Picture control, so there's some interesting advancements on this camera that I won't get into on this video, but I am interested to play with in the future in terms of picture controls and actually emulating film presets and just being able to share them and download them and put them in my camera. Seems pretty cool. That's a topic for another day. Color space, I leave that the same. Active D-lighting. So I like active D-lighting a lot. For video, I don't officially know what it does. It kind of boosts up the shadows a little bit, softens them out, and then it seems to make it a little bit more difficult to overexpose images. And I'm talking just for the JPEGs, but this also comes into effect on video as well. So active D-lighting, play around with it, see if it's for you, see if it's not for you. I'm going to leave it off on photography right now because I don't need it in my JPEGs. And if you notice that your raw files are always a little bit underexposed and you're like, what's going on? It's probably because you're shooting with D-lighting on normal or high, and the images look great on the back of your screen, but when you bring them into your computer, you're not getting those D-lighting enhancements, and you're getting a photo that's actually underexposed because you're underexposing it and Nikon's fixing it in the camera. So autofocus area modes, I actually will just let this be on full auto area AF, which might be crazy to you. So 3D tracking is also incredible. It's grayed out because I haven't adjusted one other setting. It will exist in just a moment. I like to have all the autofocus points working. And if I find myself in a situation that requires more control, I will go into one of these modes here. So you can actually customize the box here. So you can make it bigger, smaller. I do this for weddings that I will just set the box just down the aisle of the wedding, and face and eye detect only work within that box, which is really, really helpful. So it's not selecting guests, it's just focused on whoever you're actually trying to take pictures of. So you can make this smaller if, for instance, you're doing a few horizontal photos, you're switching to vertical. You can make this box as big as the aisle is and make your life nice and easy. This also comes default set, so if you press down the bottom button here, that will activate the AFS as well as the focus area. So if you move the front wheel, you will cycle through all of those focus modes. And if you move the back wheel, you'll go from autofocus S, which is synchro, to autofocus continuous. And now you can have 3D tracking. So if you stick this on anything, it just sticks there. That's very nice. And for me, these are pretty much the only modes I'll use. So if for whatever reason the autofocus isn't doing exactly what I want, I will switch to 3D tracking mode and I will select whatever object I want it to track, grab this lens, person, whatever you want to track, it'll track effectively. Now the top button here comes set default to white balance, and I don't love that. I will actually change that right now. In the menus here, we're gonna go all the way down to controls, custom controls shooting. I will find that, which is function button 1. I will go in here and I will set it to choose image area. Now whenever I hit that top button, I have the option to go from FX to DX. There's also an option that you can set it so just one press, and you press it one time and it goes from full frame to DX mode, crop mode, and gives you that bonus reach. I prefer to have an additional step because I find myself accidentally touching that and then realizing 10 minutes into a shoot that I've been in DX mode the entire time. So I like the additional step there. That's something that is just, I guess, my preference. If you're just photographing people, it probably makes sense to set it to people, but today my shoot is actually with people and a dog. So I'm gonna leave it on auto in case I'm obviously framing the dog, that it's going to identify them as a face and select them. Now into video settings. File naming, I actually leave my file names different. So if they're sorted by name, they'll actually separate. So I'm going to leave mine as DSC. Then I am selecting the CF Express card as my main slot. Again, please Nikon, update this so that we can shoot video to both cards simultaneously. It would be very nice. And then in video options, you have so many incredible options, and you can select whatever you would like if you're in a video. I'm going to leave it on H.265 10-bit. And then I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna set it to 4K 60p because that is what I'm shooting in when I'm shooting weddings. For video quality, I'm happy this comes default to high quality now, because for a while it came as normal and normal quality was not good. And then in D-lighting, I'll actually set mine to normal, which is again, personal preference. You don't have to do that. And then I skipped one with set picture control. So I don't actually want this to be the same as photo settings. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to set it to neutral. There's also a totally flat profile as well. These are burnt in looks also. So the other option would be that you shoot N-Log and you do all of your color grading. For me, I am happy shooting burnt in looks, and that means that I'm pretty accurate to what I want that final file to look like straight to the camera. I like the way that Nikon video files look, so I'm gonna set that to neutral, and then I add my LUT on top, but usually only to like maybe 50%, and that is my final look. Sometimes I might have to adjust exposure a little bit or white balance, but overall, pretty much the way the files are coming out of the camera are eventually the way that they end up on the timeline. And now everything else I leave as default until I find myself in a situation where I need to do something very specific. That might be changing my flash to rear curtain if I want to do the light trails and I want the flash to hit when the shutter closes, or that might be something else that's just specific to a job. One other thing I'll talk about, so in the top left here, there's your drive mode, and when you touch it, it lights this release mode up, and I leave it in single most of the time. If I'm doing something that needs a really high frame rate, it's very easy to switch into continuous high, and I've never found a need to go beyond continuous high on any camera, or continuous low in a lot of cases. Even like 7 frames a second, I'm pretty happy with. So if you use the front wheel here, you select low at the bottom, and then the front wheel, you can select how many frames per second. And something around 5, I am very, very happy with for weddings. I maybe use that once every 5 weddings if it's something that's happening really fast, or maybe a champagne pop or something like that you want a lot of photos. Otherwise, I am on single. Then every time I hit the button, it takes a picture. And this helps me not overshoot massively every single wedding because it's very easy to do on mirrorless. Now, let's load in some cards. I will come down here into the wrench setup menu and I will format these cards. It is always best practice to format your cards in your camera. So if you're taking these from another camera and you're putting them in here, you're probably not going to have an issue, but it is best practice to format your cards in your camera here. There we go. Now I'm ready to go to my first shoot with this Nikon Z6III. I hope that you enjoy your Nikon Z6III, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them down below. There's a lot of different settings you can change and modify, and again, there's no right or wrong way to do everything. This is how I do it, and I would be surprised if I change anything else until I get myself in a very weird situation, and usually my troubleshooting process is to just go on Google and figure out what I need to do if it's something that's buried and confusing within the menu system. But other than that, enjoy your new camera, have some fun, subscribe to the channel, watch some behind the scenes wedding days if you're interested, and I'll see you next time.